Towards the end of 1992, Sega published Batman Returns for the Genesis. It had been developed by Malibu Interactive and was based on the Tim Burton film released during the summer earlier that same year. I had enjoyed that movie immensely, so a game based on the material had its appeal. Early screenshots were promising because it looked quite similar in feel to Sunsoft's Batman, a game I considered to be quite good and one of the better film-to-game adaptations of the day. But things didn't work out quite like I'd hoped. The Sega-published Batman Returns didn't play all that well, the music wasn't great, and the darker tones of its colors didn't paint the prettiest picture. To be frank, I thought it was nowhere near as well done as the Sunsoft effort, and it paled next to the better action games coming out of Japan. To add insult to injury, Konami released a Super Nintendo game based on the movie roughly 6 months later, and boy what a difference. Konami went the beat-em-up route over the action platformer seen on the Genesis. Everything, and I mean everything, was better in Konami's version. It looked like the movie, sounded like the movie, and the gameplay felt similar to the better games in the beat-em-up genre. It ended up being a great experience, and the only real drawback it had was the lack of a two-player co-op mode, something the better beat-em-ups typically excelled at. Coming off of that Super Nintendo release, I had always wished that Konami had done a Genesis version of that game, which just made me hate the Sega-published Batman Returns that much more. Fast forward over 30 years later and we finally get a taste of what the Super Nintendo version of Batman Returns would have looked, played, and sounded like on our beloved Genesis. Thanks to the development team of Tiago SC, Pyron, Engelbard, and Vector Orbitex, we received a proof of concept demo on Christmas Day. In this episode, we will go over that demo in both single player and multiplayer and see how it turned out. The story begins with a brief summary of what's happening in Gotham City and the important players within. This mirrors closely the opening of the Super Nintendo. Let's have a look. As I mentioned in the opening, this demo for the Genesis is not a full game. It's part of Stage 1 in a boss battle from the Super Nintendo release. It's a fairly bare-bones package really, and doesn't even include all the moves and enemies seen in the original first stage. Don't let that fool you into thinking it's not worth your time, because the team behind this accomplished exactly what they set out to do. This gives you a slice of what the full game could have looked and played like, particularly that last part. You start out with the Red Triangle Gang attacking Gotham Square. You'll face a few different clown types before you meet the strongman boss that ends the demo. Batman has his basic punch-kick combo as the main means of attack, but there is also a jump kick, a jump dive, and a special move where you spin the cape around that hits all the enemies. A grapple system is also available. You can grab an enemy and throw them. You can grab them and hit them multiple times. And you can grab them along with a second enemy and butt their heads together. You can also block some of the enemy's attacks, but be aware you will lose life should you do so. Most of this feels very similar to the Super Nintendo counterpart, with one very important exception. The Mega Drive demo here has a ton more enemies on the screen. I don't mean 1 or 2 extras, but 9 total characters versus the Super Nintendo's 3. There are so many in fact that the game suffers from some pretty extreme sprite flicker trying to display it all. Fortunately, there's no slowdown to speak of, even in the game's 2-player mode. There are a few breakable items like phone booths and trash cans that give you some helpful pickups such as life replenishment. You'll also notice that the demo runs in 320 by 224, an increase in resolution that gives the screen more real estate to show off its play area. The overall look and feel here is excellent, and really shows the Genesis could have done a solid port of this game. I don't think you can talk about this demo and not put focus on the fact that it has a 2-player mode. While the concept of 2 Batman characters fighting side by side may seem silly, the demo just shows how potent the Genesis could be in this regard. My wife and I played through the entire thing multiple times, and I walked away really wanting to see more. Let's have some gameplay so you can see how it performs. It would be a tad unfair to the original to compare it to a tech demo made 30 years later, so in lieu of that, let's just say the Genesis handles things very well. The color is outstanding, the sprite size on point, and even the music, while not quite as faithful to the movie in terms of instruments, still sounds great in that FM kinda way. Every upgrade from that point forward is just icing on the cake. The improved resolution, the increase in enemy count, the 2-player mode. If you enjoyed the Super Nintendo original, this one should give you a tiny glimpse of what could have been on your Sega Genesis. Unfortunately, the download page for this makes it a point to describe the project as merely a tech demo that will never be finished. I was gutted to read this because what has been shown no doubt could have been a fantastic finished product. Even if the stages had been abbreviated and the project kept to a smaller scope, I don't think anyone would have complained, especially after the showing so far. On a more positive note, the folks that made this programmed the entire thing in assembly language, which was likely a test for something bigger and better in the future. If you'd like to play the demo here, it works on real hardware, as well as the FPGA and emulation solutions I tried. I'll put a link in the description for you. Be sure to leave a comment for the developers too. Maybe if enough support is shown, they'll give us more of this fantastic project. I'm Sega Lord X. Thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you next time.